Now, it's time for Modern Money Doughnuts with Stephen Hale and Gabrielle Bond.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Modern Money Doughnuts, a show about modern monetary theory and ecological economics. I'm Gabrielle Bond. I'm the organiser with the Sustainable Prosperity Action Group in Adelaide in South Australia. And I'm also a director and CEO of Modern Money Lab, where I work with Stephen. How are you doing, Stephen?
I'm okay, thanks, Gabby. How are you?
Good. Yeah, good. Nice and early for us.
Yeah, my name's Stephen Hale, as you know, probably. I'm an adjunct associate professor at Torrens University and an economist with Modern Money Lab. Now, as Gabby was just saying, she is a founder and the organizer of a mighty campaigning group called the Sustainable Prosperity Action Group, which had its origins in a conference that we had in Adelaide a little bit more than 2 years ago now, which had a variety of famous economists, including Stephanie Kelton and Bill Mitchell also. And we have with us today another founding member of the Sustainable Prosperity Action Group, Dr. Tori Wade, who is a former medical researcher, amongst many other things. But as far as what we're talking about today is concerned, well, I'll let Gabby tell you, because Gabby's the organizer of SPAG, about the educational activities that Tori's been engaged in our local community.
Yeah, absolutely. So welcome, Tori, and thank you so much for joining us. Tori is one of our powerhouse organisers from the Sustainable Prosperity Action Group, and previously worked with me at GetUp. So that's how I know Tori. So we've been sort of working side by side for a couple of years now on various projects with a small team of others. But it's great to have Tori visiting us on the podcast today. Tori and I usually work together at least once a week on various activist projects. And Tori's joining us from the Blue Mountains. Is that right?
That's right. It's cold and foggy up here this morning.
Thank you for getting up early.
Our American viewers won't know where the Blue Mountains is, so tell us where the Blue Mountains are.
Okay, they're west of Sydney, and they're a very popular holiday spot for people in the summer to get away from oppressive heat. Or more recently, because they're very high up, to get away from some floods that we've been having recently. Yeah.
And the bushfires did come through there a few years ago, didn't they?
They certainly did.
Yeah, not immune from climate impacts. Yeah.
No, not at all. And then, of course, we had COVID as well. Yes. So it was hard for the locals here to process the bushfires because COVID arrived right on their heels. And just getting out of COVID, the floods came. So, yes, it's been very hard.
Very tough. So how I want to introduce what we're going to talk about today is, in modern monetary theory activist circles, there's a little saying that we try to adhere to, which is each one, teach one. So we have gone a little bit further with that. We have sort of expanded that out to say each one teach 10, or each one teach at least several. And so I wanted to talk to Tori about how we have been doing that in the Sustainable Prosperity Action Group, and where and how people might be able to do this for themselves if that's something that they would like to get involved in.
Well, go on then, Gabby.
So Tori, yeah, for sure. So Tori has come up with a set of slides that we made up, which we actually have on our website, which is www.sustainable-prosperity.net.au. And there's a page on there, which is Modern Monetary Theory. And if you look on that page, you'll see our slides, which is a kind of collaborative effort, but I would say mostly Tori's work. Would that be right, Tori?
Well, yes, because I'm not an economist. When I first got involved with sustainable prosperity, I'd go around asking lots of questions like, so what's this and what does that mean and what are bonds really? And so how does this work? So I needed to put it together in a way that was very clear and very straightforward so that people would get the main points quickly.
So I'm going to just quickly show these slides. We won't talk through them because that will could take a whole episode, but I'll just show people what they look like. So we do talk about a job guarantee in our action group, and I'll come to that soon. But I'll just flick through so that people can see the types of things that we're talking about. Where does money really come from? What are the myths? And there we have the federal government is not like a household. Very important. Talking about the deficit myth. I love this slide. Oh!
So which sort of groups have you given talks to, Tori?
Oh, okay. Well, gosh, I've given talks to a group of local government service providers. I've given talks to a group at the University of the Third Age. It was a philosophy group. They were a tough nuts to crack. Okay. I've given talks to branches of political parties. I've given several of those. Basically, anyone that doesn't run away from me fast enough.
So that's more like each one teach 100.
I'm working on it, yes. And I've also taught 3 other people to give the talk.
And that is the critical bit, isn't it? Because it's got to sort of go viral in as much as it can. So, yes, so we have one of our other volunteers is actually queued up to give a talk this week. Tim Matthews will be giving a talk. And then we've got another invitation as well from a political party, excellently named the Pirate Party. They're looking for a person to give an MMT talk too. So I'll be getting onto that pretty soon.
Despite the name, they're quite a sensible bunch.
They are. Yeah,
I don't know where the name came from.
Yeah, I wonder about that.
I think one of the most important things is to involve the audience when you're giving the talk. So I think one of the most powerful things I do is I explain about inflation and where the government should be issuing money and where not. And then I give them examples, real live examples of recent government policies, like increasing grants to first home buyers, and say, well, what's this going to do to prices? And I give them about 5 examples, and mostly the audience gets them all correct. And then I say, congratulations, you're on the macroeconomic impact of government policy. So they feel empowered that they can then understand what they're hearing on the news and what likely impact it's going to have.
Yeah, it's. Do you find it's easier to get the message across to people who are not economists?
Yeah, much easier. I mean, I don't really do talks to economists, although just by accident I'll find 1 or 2 people in a group perhaps that either done a degree in economics or have got a strong personal interest in it. And if I get questions that I can't answer, I just take on notice. And I usually get excellent responses back from Stephen or Phil or someone else in SPAG that I can get back to them with.
That's a good strategy, yeah. We've also been giving copies of Stephanie Kelton's book out to anyone that we can find who we think might read it, who's in a position of influence or being able to make decisions. And some of those examples are we've been to meet with politicians. Just recently, one of our members went to meet with the advisor of Rebecca Sharkey, who's an independent in the electorate where Stephen lives. And
she's the member of Parliament.
Yeah. We've started a conversation with lots of different people. And I guess the key to it that we really need to do more of is the follow-up. So we give them the book and then perhaps, a couple of months later, we should be checking in with them again to say, have you read the book? What did you think of it? Do you have any questions? And if we got our resources right and we did more of that, I think that would be a great way forward as well.
But just for a moment to move away from us and towards people who might be listening in England or the US, how do you go about getting invited to give a talk? And could they use a version of our slides if they wanted to?
I can take that one if you like.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I mean, I first of all started out by reaching out to people I already knew to say, would you like a talk about modern monetary theory? Because one of the things that's holding back progress, in my opinion, is this terrible wet blanket of we can't afford to do it. And so once I start explaining to people, look, we can afford it, and in fact, we're not burdening our children and grandchildren with massive debt, people look interested. So I say, look, I can give a talk on this if you like, or arrange someone else to do it. And then I just find out a little bit about their group, what their interests are. That could be anything from an environmental activist group to, a local group that likes to keep up with current affairs by giving talks to union reps. We are organising talks with people active in unions. Yeah. So I think I've just done it by, what's the word? Not a snowflake, but something where you go out in different directions from where you are. Yes.
Yeah.
I know.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I know that one of the presenters of one of the KRTD shows, Jeff Epstein, does something similar in the US. So if people would like perhaps some guidance on doing a talk in the US, where little things are different, of course, the central bank has a different name, that kind of thing, although the monetary system is much the same, then they could perhaps reach out to Jeff, and I'm sure he'd help them out on that. But what Tori does is absolutely great.
We have we've also done some talks. We like to talk to climate activists, and we've done some talks. They had a festival of climate action late last year, which we had a stall at, and we were able to take over the stage and do some talks to different groups who happened to be at the festival. That was really effective. We've got another one of those invitations coming up soon as well. So we're just keeping it on the boil, aren't we, Tori? And I think now that there's an election, a federal election coming up in Australia, probably in sort of towards the end of May, we'll have a whole lot more opportunities to meet with new MPs who might have got elected as a result of changes there, and we can start the conversation again.
Yeah, you don't have to be talking to MPs, though. I'm sure, just what I took on board from what Tori was saying, that there are a lot of local organisations, if there is anyone out there watching this who's thinking, actually, I understand MMT pretty well, but I don't know how I'd go about giving a talk somewhere. You'd be surprised how grateful groups sometimes are first of all, this is such an empowering thing to learn about, but secondly, if you just reach out and offer to give a talk, often people will say yes. And the more you do it, the more confident you get. Don't worry if it's not perfect the first time you do it, because the audience, generally speaking, is very sympathetic anyway. And even if they weren't, that's only 15 people or something. The next time around, it'll be perfect if it's not the first time around. But I'd like to challenge anyone watching this. If you're not doing something like this, then why not? If you've got the time, then you can. It's a tremendous thing to have the opportunity to talk to people about something that's interesting and relevant and will transform the way they look at the world and perhaps empower them. Anyway, enough from me for the moment.
Yes, and don't forget you can grab these slides, just download them straight off our website, and then you can make them your own. You don't have to use or everything or even all of what, any of what we've got. You could make your own slides, but it's there as a resource for people if you wanted to. So please go and find them on our website if that's something you'd like to follow up. On sustainable-prosperity.net.au and look for the Modern Monetary Theory page, and you'll find lots of useful stuff there.
But you two are working on something else, aren't you?
We are, yes. I wanted to I wanted to ask Tori to talk a little bit about our next big project in the Sustainable Prosperity Action Group, and it involves I guess what is often referred to as the prescriptive side of modern monetary theory, which is aiming for full employment and a job guarantee. And this is something that we've been campaigning for since we started our group, basically. And we have a big event coming up. Tori, would you like to tell people about what that is?
Yes, we have a 2-day workshop coming up at the end of April in Adelaide, which is about designing and implementing a national job guarantee. And it's quite interesting, actually, because people will tell you, oh, but unemployment's gone down in Australia now that we're coming out of coronavirus. But what people don't realise, perhaps, is there's 2 really big problems. You're counted as employed if you've worked just 1 hour last fortnight, which of course is rubbish. It really doesn't define unemployment properly. And the second thing is that a lot of the jobs are exploited. So they're underpaid and casual, insecure, and don't allow people to plan their lives or to buy a house or to know, whether to have, all sorts of basic things that you'd like to have a little bit of certainty. Casualisation is a scourge in Australia, and I believe in other countries as well.
Not to mention wage theft and exploitation and bad treatment. Yeah.
It's even worse in the US as well.
It's true, yeah. So we have been talking about a job guarantee as a public option in the labour market, where anybody who wanted work could go and ask to be given appropriate work for their needs and their abilities, and the job guarantee would provide them with that work. And it sounds like a bit idealistic, but actually it's something that has really it wouldn't actually need to change in Australia, it wouldn't really need to change our tax system or our public service that much at all, would it, Stephen?
No, it wouldn't. The net impact on the budget is particularly when the official unemployment rate is very low, as it is at the moment, compared to what it's been in recent times. It wouldn't be significant enough to require you to rewrite the tax system or anything like that. It's administratively complicated to do, but the government already does a lot of things which are administratively complicated, and there's a big job guarantee scheme already, as some people might know, a rural one in India. There was a huge scheme relative to the size of the country between 2002 and 2006 in Argentina, which worked very well. We have had government employment schemes in the past in Australia, not quite like a federal job guarantee, but yes, we could certainly do it. And not only are all those things true, but there is a groundswell of support for a job guarantee in more than one political party at the moment. The Greens have a sort of young person's job guarantee as part of their policy platform. And every branch of Young Labour in Australia, except New South Wales, and that's just a matter of time, has come out in support of a job guarantee, as have some trade unions. And I believe you might have the senior economist at the Australian Confederation of Trade Unions giving a talk at your conference. Is that right?
we're hoping to have as one of our presenters, Lachlan McCall, who is, yes, the senior economist at the ACTU, just been appointed to that role. If he can't fly over to be with us in person, we're hoping that he will join us online, which is almost as good. So, yeah, looking forward to that. Tori, I wondered if you would talk to us a little bit about the kinds of questions we'll be asking in this 2-day workshop. Some of the really interesting, I guess, tensions or grey areas around the edges of a job guarantee that people love to really sink their teeth into.
Sure. It's really going to be an actual workshop, not just a talk fest where you go and listen to people talking one after the other. Because we do, after we've covered the basics, like how would you pay for a job guarantee and who would run it, which would have to be the federal government because they're the ones who would be issuing the currency to pay for it. Some of the issues that we'll be looking at in more detail are how would you actually implement it, like where would you start, what scale would you start it at, and how would you extend it to cover all of Australia, like who would be the organisations employing these people. And we reckon that there are two main ones. One's local government, which covers all of Australia and knows about local needs, and the other ones are the Aboriginal community organisations, because they run schemes that have elements in common with the job guarantee before that are very successful. But there'll be other organisations that will want it. We're having a particular interest in looking at a job guarantee in the arts, because the arts have been absolutely smashed by the pandemic, and they were struggling before. And the government, the federal government we've got at the moment is to the arts. So it's been really tough. So we look at how could a job guarantee work for the arts? Would it need to be jobs of community relevance, like murals or teaching people or, running arts projects that the local community wants? Or could there be a section of it where artists would get stipends to work on their own art practice? Those sorts of things we haven't worked out yet. But we do know that the arts is really important for all communities, really, and for each country's understanding of who they are and where they're going and what issues are important. We know the arts punch way above their weight, and they've been really terribly elected. So we want to see what a job guarantee could perhaps offer that sector.
Yes. And full disclosure, Tori, you're an artist, aren't you? And I am, by the way.
I am, but I'm also a retired person with superannuation, so I wouldn't be personally benefiting from a job guarantee in the arts.
No, but Tori is a brilliant artist, and you can.
And I really care about the arts.
Yeah.
And Gabrielle is a professional musician.
I was a professional musician.
I'm the only non-artist in the room.
Yeah, something I've been thinking about is, the Irish Basic Income for Artists program. And I wondered if we, whether something like, if we can't resolve this tension about what's in and what's out with the arts question, whether something like a basic income for artists as a completely separate campaign might be something worth fighting for, and then just keep the job guarantee to the more or less the two really big areas of work, which is environmental repair and restoration and caring for people, particularly elderly people, to help them remain independent and live well and not need as much expenditure on residential aged care and so forth.
I think the basic income scheme for artists in Ireland is more of a job guarantee, really.
Is that how you say it? Okay.
Well, they call it a basic income for artists, but I think people are expected to produce some art.
Okay.
But I haven't looked into the detail of it. And you have to have been a professional artist. It's not I want to do some art, give me some money.
Yeah, okay.
That's not how it works.
Yeah.
So you have to have some professional credentials. So you can call it whatever you like, really, to make it popular. You could call a job guarantee a basic income. But if it involves some requirement for people to participate in social provisioning, then it's a job guarantee. So I think the terms you use are as much about marketing as anything
And that's
else.
one of the things we'll be looking at also in the workshop. How do we best market this? What are the messages that we really want to get out there? And also we want to have a session on what could possibly go wrong. We want to know who can oppose it and how we're going to deal with those objections. And because things obviously could go wrong, and then people that don't like it will come swarming in like seagulls sensing chips to go up, and so we need to be prepared for all of that.
Yeah. So for Adelaide listeners, if you would like to come and join us, if you haven't already booked your spot, it is going to be on Sunday the 24th and Monday the 25th of April, just a few weeks from now. Unfortunately, it's not the sort of thing that we can do on, have an online option, just because it really is about discussion and interaction and collaboration, and that's really hard to recreate in an online format. Although having said that, we did a shorter version of what we're trying to achieve online earlier in the year, and that was very successful. And we also previously had a session on a job guarantee and volunteers. Could we talk a little bit about that before we finish up, Tori?
Sure, yes, we ran a deliberative forum because you can see if an organisation has already recruited a lot of volunteers, would also having a job guarantee disrupt that? We talked it through in detail, and we came to the conclusion that there were two types of volunteers. Ones that were volunteering because they had to get unemployment benefits, or they were desperate to get back to work and they wanted networks and experience. And for those people, it would be entirely appropriate for them to move from being a volunteer to being a job guarantee worker.
Yeah.
And then there are the others that are doing it for their own personal interests, who, provided the organisation continued to welcome them and treat them well, would probably keep doing just what they're doing. So there wasn't as much of a conflict as we thought there could be. It was our conclusion.
Yeah, and I can imagine a situation where job guarantee workers and volunteers are working side by side. And, in something like, for example, care for native bushland in South Australia, there's so much that needs to be done there. And you might see, a handful of volunteers working and kind of fighting the tide of invasive species. And I think, people do that work because they love it. If they had an opportunity to be paid for that work, I can't see that many people would complain about that. But if they wanted more of a, I guess, come as you please situation with work, rather than needing to be turning up regularly and sticking to certain hours and doing perhaps more of it, then I can't see, I can't really see the issue with that, with those two different types of workers, volunteer workers and job guarantee workers, working side by side. And the other thing is that volunteers have enormous amounts of skills and expertise that can be passed on.
Exactly. People who have a lot of experience working with revegetation, and I'm sure that they'd be delighted to be part of a small in-house education program for people who are just starting out.
Yeah, because a lot of these things, you can actually make it worse if you don't approach it correctly. And we need people who have been doing it for a while and people who know the science behind it to kind of take the lead on that, for sure.
We'll have to wind up pretty soon because Gabrielle has another appointment after this one. But before we finish, although people can't or people can come from places like Sydney and Melbourne to maybe to Adelaide to the workshop. But although people obviously can't come from the US to the workshop, they could perhaps read Tori's report, couldn't they?
Yes.
It's not quite there yet, but it's nearly there.
Yeah.
So that's another project that we're working on, and it will be, I guess, updated to include some of the learnings out of the job guarantee workshop that we're having at the end of April. But this is something that, again, we are hoping to be able to pass on to political candidates, to anyone who is in a position of influence, in the hope that they read it and think about how a job guarantee is not only possible in Australia, it's actually possible in less than a year. You know, we could actually do this. It's such an empowering feeling to be working on something that's achievable and would just be transformative for the lives of so many people, and is just a brilliant idea that's been offered to anyone brave enough to take it up.
I think I think we've got such a lot of momentum now that it's quite likely to happen. I just don't know when it will happen. Even people who will be ALP cabinet ministers have been heard saying about a job guarantee, at least it's not a universal basic income, which is their way of grudgingly saying, well, maybe if you're going to push us, we could do this. And there are so many people like Tori and Gabby and like Lachlan, the economist at the ACTU, and many others we could mention that are behind it, that it has a lot of momentum now. So I'd like to thank Tori for her amazing efforts, some of which we've been talking about today, and Gabby too, and just remind everybody that finally we should get to talk to the fund manager, Con Michalakis, who is the chair of Modern Money Lab that we both work for, next week. And then just say, any last thoughts, Gabby? Anything you'd like to add?
I just really enjoyed this conversation. It's talking about work that I do every day, and it's been great having Tori. Thank you, Tori, on. Thank you so much. And I think we should get more activists on this program. That's
absolutely. Well, you're the booking agent, so up to you. Thanks very much, Tori, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your holiday.
Yes, and we will see you when you come back to Adelaide, and looking forward to getting the show on the road.
Excellent.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Yes, thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.